In the last video, we were able to call our fetchUser action creator from our component did mount inside the user header class. Now in this video, we're going to start to make sure that we wire up a reducer to catch that action that is now being dispatched from our action creator. And we're going to make sure that this new users reducer is going to maintain an array or a simple list of all the users that we have fetched inside of our application. Once we collect that data inside the reducer, we can then make it available to our user header component. And then the user header component can pick out the user that it cares about and show some details about it on the screen. So let's get to it. We're going to first create a new reducer by creating a file inside the reducers directory. So I'm going to call this usersreducer.js. And then inside of here, we'll put down some typical boilerplate for a reducer. So I'll say export default, a function. This is going to be called with arguments state and action. Because this reducer is supposed to maintain an array or list of records, I'm going to make its default state value an empty array like so. Then inside of my reducer, I'm going to set up a switch statement. And we're going to set up one case here to watch for just the action type that this reducer cares about. If we open up the actionsindex.js file again, you'll recall that we only care about actions of type fetch user inside of that reducer. So back inside of this case statement, I'll say case fetch underscore user like so. Now, if we see a reducer, or an action with that type right there, we're going to make sure that we add the payload property on that action to our state array. Now we just spoke about how we can add elements to an array. Remember, we looked at this diagram right here. So to add an element to an array, we can create a new array. We can say ... state, a comma, and then the new record that we want to shove in there. So for case fetch user, I will say return ... state and action.payload. That is the new record that I want to add in. And then we'll also set up our default case, in which case we will simply return our state. Okay, so that looks pretty good. So we'll now take this reducer and make sure that we wire it up to our combine reducers call in the reducers index.js file. So at the top, I will import users reducer from users reducer. And then we'll make sure that we add this into the combine reducer call. So I'll add in a new key of users, and that will get our reducer of users reducer. Okay, so not too bad. So now, last thing we really have to do here is open up our user header.js file. So now inside of here, this component needs to get access to our Redux level state. Remember, anytime we want to do that, we will define the map state to props function. So down underneath the component itself, I will define map state to props. This will be called with a state argument. And now we need to look at state.users, and we need to find the very particular user that we care about. To get started, let's just return an object with the users property, and we'll reference state.users. So now our component is going to have access to a prop called this.props.users. That's going to be the array of all the users that we care about. All right, so now inside the render method, we're going to look through that array and find the user that we want to display. So to do so, I'm going to say const user, and then we're going to use this.props.users, that's the array of users, .find, like so. Now just so you know, find is a built-in method on JavaScript arrays. We can call it with a function. This function is going to be invoked with every element inside of that array. And so I will refer to that argument as simply user. And then as soon as we return true from this inner function right here, the entire find function is going to stop and return whatever element we had returned true for. Now, when I actually say those words out, it sounds a little bit confusing. So let me just give you a very quick example. I'll pull open my console again. We'll just do a real quick test here. So I can say const colors, and I'll do my array of colors again. And I'll add in, like, say, how about blue and red, like so. I think I got a typo there. Let me fix that. Okay, so now to get, say, blue out of there, we can do colors.find. And then for each color, I want to return the result of color being compared with the string blue. So now whichever first element inside of our array returns true for this comparison right here, we're going to return that color from the overall expression. And so we're going to do the same thing to find the user that we care about. So I'm going to say find for every user, find a user with an ID equal to this.props.user ID. And I'm going to try to put that on one line. Actually, I'll just zoom out so you can see the entire line like so. So this will find just the user that we care about. Now keep in mind, when the application first is rendered onto the screen, we will not have a list of users here. We will have an empty array, but the user that we care about is not going to actually be available. So right underneath this, we'll say if there is no user found. So if we did not find some appropriate user, then we will just return nothing for right now. So just don't return anything. I don't want this component to show any content on the screen. I don't even really think it's appropriate to put loading, although we certainly could. We could return a div that said loading like so. But I'll just keep it simple and I'll return null to indicate that I don't want this component to show anything. Now, if we did find a user, we will instead put the user's name inside of here. And so the user's name is accessible on the name property. So I'll say user.name like so. All right, and then very quickly, I want to throw in one or two quick class names here. So on that div, I'll put in a class name of simply header, like so. All right, so I think this should be just about good enough. So let's take a save on this file, and we'll flip back over to the browser, and we'll test this out really quick. All right, now I got a nasty error message here. So it cannot read property find of undefined. Let's make sure I got that in all places. Yep. So it looks like I probably have a little typo somewhere. Let's see, I've got users. You know what, I'm not going to make you, oh, that's right, little mistake right here. We defined map state to props, but we did not pass it off as the first argument to connect. So I'm going to make sure that I do so really quickly. There we go. And now if I flip back over and refresh, all right, that's better. Now it's still loading, just give it a second here. There we go, that's perfect. Okay, so I can now see that on every blog post, I've listed out the author's name. So I see Leanne Graham for the first 10, and then I see the second name of Irvin Howell, and then Clementine Bach, and so on, all the way down to the bottom. So it definitely looks like this has worked out pretty well. But there's one little issue. Remember, I mentioned there was one little issue. Now, before I tell you what that issue is, there's a little refactor that I want to show you for the user header component. So we'll take a quick pause. We're going to do that quick refactor, and then I'll show you the kind of real big issue that our application currently has. So quick pause, and I'll see you in just a minute.